Thank you. This is ICMCP's monthly mentor-mentee protege group. We coined the phrase our own, changed our name to the Hustlers group because everyone that's a mentee or mentor, or past, present, and future mentees have always got to hustle to be able to find themselves a place in the space in this industry. In these interview series and in our monthly sessions, and we meet every month, usually on the fourth Saturday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we usually have some industry subject matter experts like those who are here today to talk with us about the industry, status of the industry, where they are in the industry, what their roles in the industry, and and impart to the mentees and the mentees here, the whole idea of what it takes to be a cybersecurity practitioner. Our role here is to provide the resource and to teach and educate, and to have a dialogue and feedback between subject matter experts and our mentee group. This is whole part of the ICMCP Engage program, and it's designed to help develop the careers and opportunities and the contributions to the diverse talent in cybersecurity. Of course, you could see our topic areas: career development, career spotlight, transitioning, leadership, and tech talk, and that's what we're developing here. The next couple of months, you'll see some highlights coming up in September. It's Latino and Hispanic Heritage Week. October, it's Cybersecurity Awareness. And by the way, October is our 3-year anniversary of doing the Hustlers Club. As part of our events on October, we'll have Devin Bryant, the founder, one of the co-founders of ICMCP, speaking to us or being interviewed by us in October. And so we're looking forward to those events. November, it's Native American Heritage and Military Month, and December, it'll be Disabilities Awareness. For those of you, I'm sure most of everyone here is an ICMCP member, because you had to sort of register to get to this platform. But if you're not, you can see down at the bottom our ICMCP website, or a web address, so you should go there and register. And ICMCP has really helped to navigate some careers. And we're really focused on women and minorities in the space, advocating in the space, both at all 3 levels: legislative level, corporate level, and in the general public as well. So you can see our mission is always to consistently represent women and underrepresented minorities in the industry. I thank everybody for attending. You can see some of our upcoming events. Today is 24th, and the next one is 29th. And we really want you to give your feedback. And at the end of this session, I'll put up a little bit of a link so that you can all go and do a survey. What we've done today is we've accomplished what I think is quite a feat by having what I call the security trifecta. We're blessed to have 3 subject matter experts from the industry. Sara is from the healthcare industry, Yonesy is from the financial services industry, and Lewis is from the Department of Defense. You can see that on the screen that Sara's got 20 years. She was the former COO over at the Health Information Sharing Analytics Center. They actually help people understand the regulatory requirements and rules and the standards that exist in the industry today. She's a deputy CISO with Mass Mutual, huge organization that we all know of. And glad to have you here today, Sara. Next is that guy I call Yos, Mr. Feliciano. He's a CISO over at Jack Henry and Associates. They're a leading financial services transaction service provider, one of the leading groups in the industry. I've always admired Yonesy's capabilities, and he's one of the guys that say, listen, I'm results oriented, fix the problem. Don't assign blame, fix the problem. Let's get to the problem and get going and moving on. And of course, Pate, he's the director from the CyberSOC with CACI International, one of the stronger providers for the Department of Defense, here, Department of Defense contractors. And here's that link. I'll put it in the chat a little bit later on, but from that, let's get back to conversation. Hey, today's conversation is really focused around how different levels of engagement, how different levels of administration, management, and operations work together. I've already introduced our speakers today, but with the time that we have available, I really want to jump in and say, hey, listen, we've got 3 different industries, and all of those industries represent their own specific way of communicating concerns and challenges in the industry. I'm going to go over to Sara first, ladies first. We'll go over to Sara first and ask Sara, hey, Sara, I know, and then doing some reading about you and Yonesy and Lewis, I know that you have spent a good amount of time working with, convincing, and talking to either your peers, your folks that you directly report to, and the folks that directly report to you about the efficacy, the need, the requirement, and the real challenge around cybersecurity. My first question to you, I'm glad you asked me to clarify that this morning, right? So my first question to you, and again, I want to say this to you and Yonesy and Lewis, don't sugarcoat any of this. I mean, a lot of these folks on this call aspire to be like you guys, right? This is not like a walk in the park. You're not going to learn how to be an usher here. You're going to learn how to usher in the next generation of cybersecurity practitioners. Give it to them as hard and as raw and as real as possible so that they can understand what they're up for. And so to that extent, having said that, I mean, I was always wondering, how do you go about the process of like saying, hey, look, here's cybersecurity, and you're in the health industry. They're one of the, I won't say they're the last, but they're one of the challenging industries of adoption when it comes to cybersecurity. It's not always about, do I want to do it? Sometimes it's about, do I have the money to do it? So,
absolutely.
Right, so how do you go about communicating the need and convincing the need with tools, with processes? Talk to our folks here, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love this topic because it is one of the more challenging things about the industry that we're in, because we're inherently a cost center, right? And if we do our job really well, nothing happens. So it's almost, kind of hard to justify that cost sometimes. So I think, to me, the thing that has been most successful about convincing folks is not going into the conversation first trying to convince them. It's going in and listening first, really trying to get to know the business and build those relationships before you need them. So when you've gone in and you've said, hey, we are here to partner with you, because at the end of the day, everything is about protecting the business. And I think that's where I think one of the major evolutions that's happened in the cybersecurity field over the last 20 or so years is we used to be the no people, right? We were the people that came in and said, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. And now we've really started to take a different approach to say, we're here to partner with you to come to a mutually beneficial solution, right? Because it's all about the level of risk. We could be completely secure by going back to pen and paper. Right. But that's not going to help anybody enable them to do their business and take advantage of all of the innovation and new technology advancements that are out there. So really, it's a matter of understanding what the business is trying to do and talking about different potential solutions and having it be about a business risk decision. And the more that they know you're actually legitimately trying to understand what they're doing, the more they're going to understand that you're there to help them and help them protect what they're doing. And so I've also used a lot of approaches of trying to give them realistic scenarios of things that could happen. Not the worst case scenario of, an APT coming in and targeting us. And sure, that could happen, but you're way more likely to have just, an average employee click on a phishing link, right? So something realistic that isn't so big that they think that you're just being dramatic. So, and talking through, okay, well, what would you, what if this happened? And how would you want to react? And, actually talking through some of that. And I think that has been what has been most successful for me. But I think, David, to one of the things that you said, particularly in the healthcare field, that's there's always a trade-off decision. I've had so many doctors say to me, well, every dollar you make me spend on cybersecurity is a dollar I'm not using saving a life.
Mhm.
You know, how can you, what I'm say, how can you sleep at night?
Mhm.
So, you know, and it's hard, right? Especially if somebody is kind of starting with a position like that. But I think that's where, you know, there's benefit in listening to your peers in the industry as well. I met a woman through a health ISAC event, and she was a former nurse who ended up getting involved in the cybersecurity field because she started to really understand the impact to patients' lives through the cyber risk that was being ignored. And so one of the things that she was coaching to people to say was to start the conversation in the medical space with, I want to bring to your attention a patient safety issue that I
Mhm.
think you might have overlooked.
Right.
And that just really shifted that mindset of thinking about talking in the language that the doctors and nurses are all familiar with. And it helped to, you know, sort of bridge, you know, open that door to a better
Sure.
dialogue.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, over to you, Yonesy, because quite frankly, as a CISO, that role has changed over time. The CISO used to be the guy that was always focused on just the creating the security program and the plan, and then disseminating that, cascading that throughout the rest of the organization about how we should be securing the business, as Sarah aptly pointed out. It's about the business. If we didn't have a business to secure, we'd probably not be in business. So it's a good thing that we have a business to secure. But now, from your perspective, now the role of the CISO is now talking to folks in the role that Sarah was in, talking to the board, talking to the C-level folks, and now helping them to see exactly what's necessary operationally to secure the business. How do you go about doing that? I heard how Sarah goes about doing it. What's your process and what's your approach to making that communication up and down the chain?
Sure. Thank you so much for a great, insightful question. But before I get to your answer, right, wanted to give some context. So I grew up in the 90s, hip hop, storytelling, the Bronx. So I was always, throw it up, right? I was always enamored with the art of storytelling, right? So important to be able to tell stories. And I think Sarah's spot on, right? It's all about creating a risk-based approach. You know, you could do a million and one things. What's your priority? But what does it mean to the business at the end of the day? Why are they doing this thing? So as I've gone through the ranks as a technologist, network engineer, you know, security architect, security leader to CISO, one of the things that I say I have evolved to at this juncture in my career is to be able to tell that story. As you mentioned, I recently joined Jack Henry and Associates. I've been here for about 8 months. And in those 8 months, I can tell you that my storytelling capability is getting better. And the reason is getting better is because I'm listening more, right? So the first month when I joined, the first thing I did was, let's meet with the businesses, the technologists, legal, everyone in the organization that was doing something to get to know our customers, know who they are, who do we serve, what do they expect from us. And as I put together my roadmap, my 3-year plan, and look at my strategy, at the same time understanding what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, opportunities that we have, and our threats, and then pulling a team together, right, to go after those initiatives and those activities, and at the same time telling the story of how that would mean more to our business. Just this past week, I was out for the first time at our national sales and marketing meeting, delivering that message that we've been implementing over the last 8 months, and they couldn't be happier. I met with each of my business leader units, the CEO, the COO, chief risk officer, you name it, right? Some members of our board and even some of our customers, and they're really excited. And the reason behind that is they're happy with the story that we've put together based on where we were, where we are, and where we're going. So for me, at this juncture, right, maybe not if you're in an entry level type stage, if you're in that stage, do as much as you can to learn and go out there and solve problems. But what's important to me at this juncture in my career as a CISO, I've been a CISO since 2005. I would say that being able to tell that story, a meaningful story that can help deliver positive outcomes, is really what I'm looking to do and what I'm excited, that keeps me excited each and every day, Dave.
Got you. Thank you very much. And that pulling together, first of all, what I took away from that and what you and Sara said is, one, don't sell on FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Here comes the pain. Here comes the problem. Here's the world's going to fall down, and here's what's going to happen to you. I mean, it's true. It's what's going to happen to you if it doesn't work. But first of all, listening, seek to understand before you seek to be understood, and then also having business, technology, and communication skills is really a real requirement when you reach that decision-making level, just above the pen testing level or the mid-level. Being able to look at the data, make a decision, implement the decision to the satisfaction of supporting the business. But you also mentioned pulling together a team. And then there are folks in the team like Pate, who is the SOC director at CACI. So Louis, when you come off mute there, give us a real sort of, give us your blow by blow when you have to talk to a direct report like Yonesy, and then up the chain to someone like Sara, who was at COO. How do you receive the information, massage the information, because Yonesy is going to put together the plan, and you got to go do that plan. Now, how do you hear that information, cascade it to your folks, your analysts, and your technicians, in your group, and go about implementing that plan? And how do you communicate up? Because sometimes what you hear may not fit with what you have. So tell us how do you go about that process?
Tough following these two, I tell you, but I'll give it my best shot. First, kind of like Yonesy did. Let me just put a little bit of context to it as well. Supporting the DoD has the similarity with supporting any private operation or any for-profit. So the value chain, the business, what it is, what are your goals, that's always paramount. So we have that in common. What may be a little bit of a side shoot is that in the Department of Defense, we put a lot of emphasis on being effective. And what I mean about being effective, we have to make sure that whatever action we're trying to implement happens. If we need to launch a plane, if we need to guide a plane, if we need to bring it back in, if we need to send reporting orders to troops, we are supporting those folks that are supporting our freedoms and our value systems. So when it comes to security, then really where we play a big role in is that we have to make sure that we are effective. We're very effective. And sometimes that means not placing such an emphasis on how much it costs, because the cost may be warranted. Although cost is always in there, and under NIST documents, which the federal government uses a lot for risk management, one of the big parts of that holistic enterprise risk management is budgetary. But it's slightly different there. So I go in when I talk to folks that are at C-level equivalent in the military, like these accomplished folks are. You find a similar vein is that they're very, very accomplished people. They did not fall asleep and wake up into these positions. They groom themselves. They put themselves in a position by training and being dedicated and passionate. So when you walk into those offices, you already know that you're speaking to people that are very, very well accomplished. So one of the things that you want to convey, or in my position as a CSOC director, what I want to convey is that, hey, I'm a team player. I'm here to support my leadership in any way that I can. I think that's important for them to know that, and that I understand that they're leaders because they've been vetted, that they've made it through, they've been selected, and they deserve those positions. And then one of the things that I try and talk about is, are there ways in the organization that could be streamlined from a hierarchy perspective? Because one of the things I find out that from my position, if there are too many levels between me and them, it starts to become ineffective or less effective, I should say. So we want to try and right size both up and down. And I try to encourage lateral communications, because I've been in organizations where, say, the operations team doesn't really have the ability to talk directly to, say, the programming team or the financial team or the security team. They have to all go up to some manager level, and then that manager talks to this manager, and it goes down. And I think that slows down progress. It impedes. So from a reporting perspective, especially if I go in a new organization, which probably every 3 years, about 3 years or so, I go into a new organization. That's one of the things that I talk to my superiors about. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but I don't know until I get there. And same as down. So the folks that report to me need to have access to me as well, and they need to be certain that the person that they're working for, because that's important to them. It's not just they're working for some company, but they're working for some person. So they need to know that I care about them. And like I think Sara said, the management piece, you have to be there. You have to know, they have to know that you care. They have to know that you're solving the problems and removing the barriers that they cannot move. And going up the chain, and one of the other things that's very important, I think, is me being aware and understanding that the C-suite will never have a really holistic view of so many levels below them because they're too high up the chain. So it's part of me as a team player and their eyes and ears on the ground to kind of talk to them about the culture and talk to them about, you know, some of the, sometimes there are things that we're doing, they call them the sacred cows. Maybe they don't make sense from a superficial level, but then there's some reasons why you don't want to touch those things, especially when I have a new C-suite member that comes in. Well, why in the world are we doing this? That doesn't make sense. Well, that's true. It doesn't make sense like CENTS, but it makes SENSE. So that I think that's very important too, that I have to kind of, you know, go up and down or have them make sure they understand that. And then realizing my shortcoming too, in the same sense, the higher you go up, the harder it is to touch down. So now I've got to put people in place and trust them, empower them, that they have their finger on the pulse of the folks that are direct reports to them, so that they can come to me with potential issues or emerging issues, and that we can get ahead of them. Again, going back to that coming into the C-suite office, and making them really, really feel comfortable that I'm a team player and that I'm there to do whatever I can to support them. So I think that's been kind of helpful and successful for me, if I can say I've been somewhat successful. So that's what I would offer at this point. Okay, thank you.
We should not going to be running for office anytime soon, so we know exactly how you manage up, because sometimes things that come down, they have to be shot back up the food chain, if you will. So, you know, one of the other questions I had is that the business itself, whether it's healthcare or whether it's financial services or even in Department of Defense, the business itself always opens the door for more vulnerabilities and attacks. I mean, so when a new business initiative comes down, we're going to do this because it's going to make us X amount of dollars in a specific amount of time. What do you do, Yonesy, to hear that and develop a plan for what you know is going to be a vulnerability creator? What do you do there, and what do you do with your team, and how do you prepare them?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Again, Dave, another insightful question. In any type of situation, whether it's a business relationship, personal relationship, the one that we have today, it's really about trust, right? Dave, you trust us, Sara, Louis, and I to be here today to talk to our mentor and mentees. There's a trust that's built there. So obviously in a new role, new organization, the first thing you have to do is establish credibility. Credibility means that, are you delivering positive outcomes based on the work that you do? So if you're in security, via security. If you're in marketing, via marketing. So obviously I'm in cybersecurity. So my goal initially is to build that credibility that then, because I've done credible things, become trust. There's that trust, right? So that's from a delivery and execution standpoint. At the same time, I think, Louis, you nailed it when you mentioned that we have to be team players, right? everybody wants to work with positive people. So how do you engender positivity through positive affirmations, right? You mentioned earlier, one of my quotes, fix the problem, not the blame, right? When people can see that you say that, but then you live in that fashion, people want to work together. The best teams in the world, whether in sports or in business, they're successful because they trust each other, right? Because they execute at a high level and they hold each other accountable. So that's got a lot of credibility and trust built in. So when there's a new business initiative, right, the goal would be that you have already established your credibility so that when you're asking for very exigent type of activities to be performed, such as maybe you do a code review before something goes into production, you have your security architects review the architecture to make sure that it's sound. And then prior to this thing going into production, you're providing a quality assurance and validation that things were set up in the manner that you were going to set those up. And then again, the boon, I believe, for being able to do this is via transparency. So as you're building your credibility, are you showcasing to that specific business how many vulnerabilities are created when they follow the process and when they don't follow the process, and how long it takes them to go fix stuff? And it's almost like, wow, Yonesy's team, they're helping me not be in front of the CEO or the risk management committee because I did not do what they asked me to do, which as a matter of fact, saves me time, energy, and obviously being in a bad place at the wrong time. So that's usually my approach. And I've got to tell you, I've had conversations in the past where the business leaders were very combative. But once we were able to build that relationship, build that trust, build that credibility, the next time we had a discussion, they knew, oh no, these folks, they want me to be successful. They want all of us to be successful. We're going to do what they're going to do. Relationship management, trust, and credibility.
Wonderful answer, Yonesy. Thank you so much for that, because trust, it starts with trust, man. That's the anchor of this whole industry, is trust, being able to trust what the folks like Yonesy and Sara and Lewis are saying. What they're saying is going to definitely provide you the business benefit that you're looking for. So Sara, you've got to start with trust, because you're talking to the board, right? You're talking to the C-level and folks, and they're saying, we want to do this new process, and you're listening and you're listening. You're like, yeah, damn, this is gonna blow Yonesy's mind, and it's gonna really create havoc at Lewis Pate's level with those engineers and those architects and designers. This is gonna be crazy. I mean, and you don't want to say no. And I've read in the past where you said, I won't say no, I'll just tell them this is what's going to happen, right? So how do you take that whole process and message and put it in the mind of a board member who's like, shareholder value, right? Shareholder value. That's what, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. How do you convey that, communicate that message to them, and communicate it in such a way that it really resonates with them? And then they're ready to go like full steam. Here's the $1 million, $2 million that you asked for, 10 million in some cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, because that's always the challenge, right? And getting people to understand the risk. So I think one small advantage that we have is that a lot of these cybersecurity challenges have been more at the forefront in the news these days. And we've seen some major impacts to organizations and their ability to operate, right? So I loved what Yonesy said about storytelling, right? So tying in some of those stories and making them relevant to something that they've asked, right? So not saying no, certainly, but also talking about how do we do this in the way, right? And what are the trade-offs to making things happen? And I think when you're, especially at the board level, a lot of times, they are going to set a very high level direction but how you make that happen on an operational level. I actually want to go back to something that Lewis said that I think is really important, because he was talking about the hierarchy and too many levels and going up the chain and down the chain. And that's where I think, we can get caught in some of these cycles where that strategic direction is set of these big lofty objectives, right? But losing what does that really look like from the folks who are going to go and implement that, right? How feasible is this actually? And both from a security standpoint and our ability to secure it, but also just from an operational standpoint, right? Is, what does that mean? What does it mean from the standpoint of trade-offs and resources and things like that? So I think it does go back to exactly what Yonesy said in building trust. And it's not just with the business too, it's also with your peers and in IT operations and enterprise architecture and other places within the technology parts of the organization. I actually have we've got a kind of situation right now where Mass Mutual is shifting. We're trying to shift to more of a DevOps model, right? And automating the DevOps pipeline in the cloud. And so this is a pretty significant transformation that we're going through because Mass Mutual is a 170-year-old company. And so we still have a whole bunch of mainframes, right? And so it's including a transformation of the skill sets of our workforce as well. And so we have a little bit of this culture clash, and we're trying to do purposeful change management, but we have a lot of developers that are ready to go on the DevOps side. And then we've got a lot of the sort of legacy technology skill sets, and trying to bridge that gap. A big part of what I'm trying to do is exactly what Lewis said, right? Like try to go to my peers to have those conversations about the people who work for us to make sure that we're understanding how is all of this actually coming about in their day-to-day job, and then taking that up to the next level and saying, okay, well, if we have to accomplish this thing that's kind of coming down from above, how are we going to effectively do that? And then to the other point that Yonesy made was, the data speaks, right? So how do we provide them with the data if we want them to consider, an adjustment or an alternative to the approach? So it's always a balancing act, right? But I think being very purposeful about it and thinking, stepping back and thinking about it strategically and identifying where the actual problems are versus kind of reacting to the symptoms that are popping up to something that's really actually a root cause elsewhere.
Thank you. Great answer, Sara. And personally, I'm going to come to you, Lewis, because Yonesy at the CISO level and Sara at the CISO level and the COO level, they've got trust with each other. They've got trust, and they trust each other, and they're all gung-ho about it, and they've assessed their risk, right? Not your risk, their risk. And now they're coming to you like, we're agreed. We've assessed the risk. We're willing to take so much risk. Now it's on you to make sure that the risk that we're going to be operating in, the risk things that we prioritize, our sacred cows, our crown jewels, we need you to protect them anyway, right? How do you go about now taking all that, these as you call them, these astute folks, right? These astute folks, how do you take their initiatives now and really operationalize it? And before you answer that, I want everybody in the audience, hey, listen, we're going to be asking you guys to come up with a couple of questions. You can put them in the chat, because when we get to about 5 or 10 minutes before close, we're going to put your questions in the chat to ask Sara, Yonesy, and Lewis questions. But Lewis, back to you. What's your answer, please?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I felt very nostalgic when Sara mentioned mainframes. Believe it or not, that was how I cut my teeth initially in the military. We worked on, if any of the mentees out there maybe wants to look it up, IBM 360 mainframes. So they've still got a kind of a soft spot in my heart. But yeah, so to get to answering your question, very, very good question. And I am more, kind of boots on the ground, and then activities that we do at the SOC level are in direct alignment with the policies that come out of the C-suite. So that's the first thing. We should not be accomplishing any activities, any security activities that cannot be traced back. If I pull the thread, I need to be able to trace it back to some policy level that comes out of the decision making out of that C-suite. Because in the organization, really, that's where the risk, that's the only place that the risk can actually be accepted. So from there, I try and bring people in and security practitioners in who are really the professional gatekeepers. They're the very first professional gatekeepers. We know that security is the responsibility of everyone. We've all heard that. So I would say our practitioners aren't more important, but they are very important, and they are one of the pillars. So first thing that I look for is to make sure that they have the requisite skills and experience. It's a little bit easier for them to get the skills on their own because they can find training, outside and external. But then when it comes to experience, I think that that's one way I'm able to help. So I try and place my folks in situations that help them to grow, place them in situations that are maybe uncomfortable for them, place them in situations that they will need help, but then I'm there to kind of guide them along the way. They need to get used to thinking in a structured way in a very unstructured environment. So if we are to adapt to all the security mandates that come down, and we have to perform them and make sure that the business assets, the value chain is protected, then we need to really understand that we operate in a very dynamic environment. It's always changing. The adversary doesn't sleep. The technology is constantly changing. So the security practitioners need to have a mindset of, hey, I am going to be a lifelong learner, because to be in this environment and to be a security professional, you're always going to be learning new things. The technology just changes that much. And when I put them in those complicated situations, it's to give them that experience, because they brought the skills. They can go, get academic training for the skills, but I need to make sure that they have that experience. And then I'm able to continually feed the tiers within our SOC. We've got 4 different tier levels, and with each higher tier, then you're entrusted. And like Yonesy said, trust, right? That's one of the threads that the 3 of us I noticed have talked about, and you'll find that in functioning organizations. You have to have that trust. So we have to have that trust amongst the security practitioners themselves at that level, and then that trust again. Who am I working for? And is this person going to put me in a situation to succeed? And if I do have some problems, are they going to be there for me? And what it does too, it helps them to see the organization in a way that they can progress. So they're going after all of the goals of the organization, the business goals of the organization. They see where they fit. They understand how important security is. They understand that we are not accomplishing any activities unless they come out of the C-suite, and that they've been vetted and they're good for the organization. So I have to make sure that I kind of pass all those things on to them, and then kind of, leadership by walking around. I believe in that, leadership by walking around as much as I can. I know we're in an environment where a lot of it is virtual, but I have a lot of my staff that's very close. So I try and stay as physically in contact and virtually in contact with them as possible. And those things help us really to get after these issues quicker. And then when I stand before Sara and Yonesy, then there's a good outcome.
That's great. That's great. You guys are going in a direction that I wanted to go also, because it gets to the conversation of trust. That means trust up and down the value chain, up and down the food chain. And it also gets to the folks that are actually doing the work. How prepared are they today? I know that there are I understand that there are just imminent challenges and changes in the threat environment, and it changes almost, and it's like an organism that just continually just reshapes itself, so that you have to reshape your defense. I was once talking to a hacker, and he said, any organization that's got this super high defense, I always wonder what the hell they got back there? It's like a little organization, but they've got this super high defense. Now I got to know what they got back there, so they'll spend their time to get there. What do you do at all levels to deal with way imminent challenges? Are you focusing on people? Are you focusing on process? Are you focusing on technology? Let me start with you, Louis, and then work our way back up the chain here.
Okay, so very good question. I get asked that a fair amount of time. So the first, I would say yes, yes, yes. People, processes, technology. We have to implement all of those in the right kind of mix within the recipe. Probably one of the biggest leverages for us is being in contact with the other threat reporting agencies, whether they're academic or whether they're private or whether they're federal, they're government, other governments. So one way that we really enrich and inform our offensive activities or defensive activities is just through threat sharing. So in our SOC, we subscribe to many different threat monitoring, threat reporting platforms. And based on those, we take those as they're categorized, and then we evaluate whether or not those threats, if we have vulnerabilities that those threats can take advantage of, and we can be exploited. So as I mentioned earlier, because this field changes so much and the threat vectors change so much, we have to stay on our toes, and we can't do it just by human vigilance. So we have to have the technical machinery in place, and with the signature based, right? We'll buy the signatures and we look at some of the behavior based and all that, so we can predict a lot of it. But we're still looking, for that proverbial needle in a haystack. So we have to make sure that we empower our folks, again, with those skills and the training, that we invest in the right types of technologies. We install them properly, make sure that they're accomplishing the goals, the security goals that they were supposed to. And then we're continually monitoring those, right? Continuous monitoring is a big one. We all know that. Just because you put it in place, you've got to continue to monitor and the effectiveness.
Right.
And then the processes, we have to continually change those processes, update those processes as the threat environment that you mentioned changes, because the threat attack, the sources, the techniques, they're ever changing. So when we finish some sort of a risk analysis, it's good for a very short period of time. So we have to always in there. And that's where we're tied together then back to the C-suite. So what I go in and I say, okay, based on intelligence and mapping that to our business goals, we have this that we need to protect. And we know that there's this threat out here. Here's an assessment of our protections. And then the C-suite at that point makes a determination based on their risk appetite and budgetary, right? And stakeholders and all the things that happen in the C-suite. And then they come back and they say, okay, this is the way we're going to go. But that's continual, that's process, that requires that trust that we've been talking about.
Sure. Yeah, so Yonesy, now Lewis has come to you and said, hey, listen, this is a big threat. And you look at the threat that they're dealing with, and it's not necessarily a part of the plan that you put together. Now you've got to look at your security program and your security plan and making adjustments and revisions to it. I mean, what's the process? What's the thought process that you go through? God damn it! I mean, ding dang it, rather. ding dang it! This is a whole new process. It's new, and it's now, and it's going to affect the business revenue generating approach. Now, what do you do? What's your prioritization approach there?
Thank you for that question, and Louis, great job answering the previous one as well. So I would say that is really at the end of the day around transparency, collaboration, communication, and consistency, right? So I need to be able to have built the transparency so that I can bring that up. And I can tell you that I call them audibles because they happen. Then you have to call an audible because you have to deal with it, right? You can't shy away from something might be imminent or otherwise, right? So the key here is to be able to go back, right, and reprioritize. So what does that mean? Do I need to reprioritize another project that maybe this one now slots before it? Do I have a kind of a war chest that I keep on the side? Can I afford to use that to deal with this issue that just propped up? Can we do away with other things while we deal with this and then reprioritize as the year comes along? Because at the end of the day, you may want to do everything, but you don't have time, you don't have people, you don't have process nor technology to do it all. So you're always in a state of reprioritization. So that's sort of how I do it. I mean, without things popping up, I meet with my team, I would say on a quarterly basis specifically to talk about where we are with our strategy as it pertains to project management of initiatives. We meet every week, and on project status, we meet every other week. And really, are there things that are getting in the way? What is new? What has propped up? And I can tell you that I've gone into budget seasons with my budget approved, and after my budget is approved, something else pops. Right? So now I have to build a case study. This is where the transparency comes into play. I need a case study, and I've had discussions with my directs. We think this is so great. Okay, then what of the other 20 things you're working on? Which one are you giving up? Right? You have to be able to have that transparency to have those discussions, because frankly, when I talk to my direct team, my leadership team, I let them know all the time that they're getting it done. Our teams are getting it done. I'm sort of like the news anchor, right? I'm providing the news. So we can prioritize, I will influence, but we all need to pitch in. And that's part of that transparency, as you mentioned, up and down the stack.
Right. And Yonesy, in the past, you've said to me, Dave, it's not 1, 2, or 3. if it's not 1, 2, or 3, I'm not going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, maybe. But today, that's not going to be on my list. And so, Sara, now that Yonesy's he's called an audible, and you're Jerry Jones you're Jerry Jones up in the Jerry Jones up in the booth, and you're like, what kind of audible is that? And how is that gonna, how is that gonna change or affect or change our balance of power, change our market share, right? Change our market share, how we're actually gathering and acquiring customers and relating. I mean, when you hear this emanate from the bottom up, so to speak, and I don't mean bottom up literally, guys, forgive me if it sounds that way, but when it comes to you, now that you've got it and you've got to go up to the board, right? And I know you're going to drag Yonesy with you, because the CISO's got to come with you to give that real story. And so when you guys go up to the board and see them and the CEO, and you tell them about this new imminent danger, what are you doing, and how are you helping them see the forest and the trees?
So I have an almost unfair advantage in answering that, because as my COO role, I was COO at a cybersecurity company. So I had the advantage that our board was made up of CISOs. So I almost had the opposite problem, was they got too into the details of the questions. But I will say, at my job prior to that, I did leverage the COO quite a bit, and he brought me several times to couple these conversations together, to say, okay, you can join forces from the business perspective, because even if the CISO is speaking in business terms, when you also have the representative that's coming from the business, that speaks volumes, right? When you have got an advocate or an ally that is in the business space, who is also saying, this is very important and it's going to protect the way that I'm doing business, or if we were to be interrupted, this is what it would mean to our ability to operate or to deliver on this larger objective. And then I think, it goes back to data. So for example, we had a big product launch that was going to happen. I was at a genomics biotech, and we had a big product launch that was going to happen. And of course, we in the security team heard about it like 2 days before it was going to launch. And they had done absolutely nothing. And so we rushed around really quick to just throw a web application firewall in front of this thing. And they were frustrated with us, right? And but we put it in place, and it was really fascinating to see what happened, because the genomic space is a hot space right now. And it is also something that a lot of foreign governments are investing in research in. And so we immediately saw some activity coming from China. And So we started watching that activity. We watched them. It's very like genomes, human genomes are massive in scale. And so they were running a scraper trying to pull this information. And so even though we let them run all weekend, they got like 0.01% of it. It was something very, very small. But we ultimately cut them off. But we went back and used that data because we were actually able to show them that data then, because we were able to view the activity. And so it allowed us, it helped inform a discussion about what is the actual threat that we're seeing. You know, there is real interest in this data. At the same time, you're trying to encourage research and sharing. So what is the right answer? What is the right balance? How much do we want to invest in protecting it? And, you know, what are the other things we can do? Like have security be part of the conversation earlier in their product development cycle.
Absolutely. So listen, we're probably we're coming up on time. What I would like to do is to answer some of the questions from the audience. But what I'm going to ask you guys in the audience to do is to come off mute, put your camera on, and ask your question. Sami, you're first. You should come off mute and come on camera and ask your questions that you put in the chat to Sara, to Louis, and to Yonesy. You ready?
Yeah.
Well, that's Samuel, but okay, you go first, Samuel. I got your question right here. I think your question was to Sara. Please continue, ask the question, sir. He went away? Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm there. I think the question, Sara, I have it there on the post is, you know, you mentioned about, you give us as an example of a nurse who, in a certain situation, you mentioned that helped to kind of be the translator between what happened in business, and that helped to resolve some of the issues there. What I'm trying to understand is, are you seeing it from the angle of we should also probably train cybersecurity professionals more into business so that when we do understand business, probably we'll be able to do a better job in implementation of the solutions that you're implementing. But also secondary, in our communication with business, probably we'll be able to be well understood and we'll also be able to understand them. Is that the point?
Yeah, so, you know, we're certainly not asking them to be able to go out and, you know, do open heart surgery or to, you know, sell insurance or whatever the business is. But we are asking them to at least understand, you know, the basics of what the business does, because it matters. So one thing that I try to do is specifically, you know, use time in things like all hands meetings to talk about the business priorities, to talk about the things that the organization is strategically trying to accomplish. But one key thing that I also like to do is sort of establish some strategic pillars that are what this team is about. And one key thing that I always emphasize is that everybody on the team is a representative of the team. So every conversation you have, you are the security team, because you might be the only person someone else meets from the security team. So it is your job to sort of act, you know, in alignment with how, you know, that approach of that listening, understanding, and then, you know, and then sharing and taking an education approach with cybersecurity. And so I think really reinforcing that, and then, you know, giving the team also that bandwidth to learn more about the business and have them come forward and ask questions. But the more that they're actually getting out there as well, that helps them to build those relationships and understand the business better.
A quick one, just when you're on that. My experience in most of the organization is that IT or security teams are left out when organizations are working on projects. We come in the last minute. How have you found some solutions to overcome that challenge?
Anyone can answer that question. And of course, I think he's talking also to Sara, but Louis or Yonesy? Am I
Okay,
the one? Am I frozen?
I'll jump in really quickly then. Trust is built up by that constant engagement. Whoever, I'm not sure, Samuel, which where you are exactly in your role in the organization, but either if it's you, if it's not you, or you're the person that you report to or that they report to, it has to be brought up to the decision makers in the organization, right? To the senior leadership, senior management. It has to be brought up, number one, as an issue or a concern or something that is inhibiting your ability to support the business processes and business goals. And like Sara said, if that happened to be patient care, then you talk about patient care. If it's selling insurance, then you talk about selling insurance. But how does the security functions, how do security functions affect and promote accomplishment, successful accomplishment of the business goals? If that that person who has a speaking part is able to articulate that, then I have found that that's the way to get the ear of the decision makers, and then you will not be excluded. The security function will have a seat at the table, or at least a seat in the room going forward.
Okay, good, thank you.
David, if you don't mind, I have two specific, just real techniques that I have used in the past.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy, for going on mute. Okay, good.
One is, so with my team at the genomics company, we sat down as a security team in a conference room and covered the whiteboards. We did a relationship heat map. And so we took a look at who are the people in the organization we need to have strong relationships with, so we get invited to those meetings, or we hear about things as they come up organically. And then who are also the other people we need to have strong relationships with, like IT operations, for example. And we color coded them. So we killed a whole bunch of Post-its, and it said, you know, the hot pink ones were the ones where we had poor relationships. Orange was maybe not necessarily that it was poor, but maybe we didn't have a relationship. And then green was good, right? So maybe they were the folks who we could specifically ask, hey, I noticed you've been going to those meetings. Security isn't invited. Do you mind kind of giving me a debrief or raising a flag if you hear of something? But we were very purposeful about thinking about those important relationships. And then we also made plans for, okay, so how are we going to go and build the relationships we need? And we specifically said, okay, you know, Stephen, you are going to go find that person and ask them to go grab coffee with you tomorrow. And, you know, just kind of get to know them. And so then we came back and did the exercise again in 6 months and remapped to see, had we improved, what was our footprint there, and how many more, you know, meetings were we starting to get invited to, and where were we learning more. And another thing that we did is also, we did a hackathon. So we built up a hackathon where we brought all of the developers together, and we actually had them hack their own code. And we did a lot of work to prepare for this, but they had so much fun. Right. And, you know, so we taught them how to use Wireshark and like all of this, you know, fun stuff. And they were just having the time of their lives. So they were talking about that for a really long time afterwards. The other thing that happened is now they've got this in their brains. And if they were developing something, they're like, oh, wait, this might be a problem. They just pop by the desk of our security engineering team and ask a question. So we started to build, you know, that trust and that relationship, and made it really relevant to what they did in a day in, day out basis.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Some of those questions answers that you were giving are answering some of the questions. I'm going to go to like 3 or 4 questions to close out this. Sami Naaman, hope I'm not killing and destroying your name, but forgive me if I am. Please charge it to my head, not to my heart. But you've had a couple of questions, and ask those questions really quickly. And, you know, we're going to go in rapid fire and get questions out and answer questions from the team here.
Sure, sir. So first of all, thanks a lot, and hello everyone. So I'm into the cybersecurity from past few years. I've always been like a trainer or a mentor. Like I've never been a full-fledged role guy. Like I've always worked as a freelancer, or we can say freelancing agents. But like whenever I try to find some full-time role, they always require some kind of experience like that. Even the entry-level roles require 2+ or 3+ years of experience. Now being the, like still I'm the undergraduate student, the final year student. So what should be our approach towards getting the first job into the cybersecurity as a full-time role? Like, if we talk about most of the countries, these companies do not sponsor the international applicants. They do not sponsor the visas for like people in India.
Yeah, that's a multi-pronged question. So
Perfect person to answer.
Yeah, so I saw the question on the chat, and I would address the first component, right? Continue to do what you love. The passion that you're showing being a freelancer, be you, right? Be authentic. So continue to do that. Now, how to get in front of companies, right? So obviously you're doing a good job as a freelancer. You may want to hook up with a consulting company where you're a freelancer for the consulting company, and then they already have built relationships with organizations, and you may have a kind of the pick of different projects that you can work on doing the things that you want to do. So that would be my recommendation for you. And as it pertains to, visas and things of that nature, as you know, certain companies provide that level of sponsorship, others don't. But if you're dealing with a consultancy shop that already have those relationships, that might be a way of building those. And frankly, at the end of the day, it's really all about relationships and finding the right place. We always talk about the shortage of cybersecurity professionals. That is true, but nevertheless, you've got to build those relationships. And I would say, if I were doing this all over again, if I go back, 27 years to my very first job, I would take advantage of situations like this. I would take advantage of the plethora of consulting companies, because it's not just the big four anymore. There's a ton of them out there that specialize in cyber. And I would put my hat as part of providing them services so that I can find my home. And I can tell you that midway through my career, when I shifted into financial services, that's exactly what I did. I went to be a consultant. I worked for like 30 different FIs. Lo and behold, I tried to transition from a CISO in manufacturing to a CISO in financial services. So my stopgap was really to go into consulting. So Tony, good luck to you, but I think that would be the roadmap for your current situation. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect answer. See, I was really hoping you would jump in there and answer that question. Somi, thank you for asking the question. I want to go to Leah Stewart. Can you come off mute and come on, put your camera on, Leah, and ask your question?
Hello.
Hey, Leah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Leah Stewart. I want to thank everyone for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm learning so much. So my question is, so I'm wondering how to get experience in cybersecurity through internships. I'm new to the field, and I just want to know, are there any websites? I just want to learn. I want experience through internships first, but I'm also going to be applying to jobs, but I understand and I know that I need experience. So that's where I'm at.
Yonesy.
I'm going to go 2 for 2 on that one. So I'll take the next one too, since I've been very quiet drinking my water here. It's getting hot here in the Northeast. So great question. Internships. I'm actually meeting with my internship folks in a couple of weeks because, I want to get in the cycle. So normally for organizations, their internship process starts right now, like around this area in the fall, right after the summer's done. That's when they start allotting their internships. I would say that you're already in the right organization. So ICMCP can help you with internships. So that make sure that, again, you're on the Slack, you're reaching out and making sure we have those. I got to tell you, when I have internships available, ICMCP door, right, to make sure that we can intake folks as well. And there's a ton of other CISOs out there that are doing the same. We've got a job to do, and that's making sure that underrepresented minorities and women can get into some of these roles. So we're definitely doing our part. From a search standpoint, so I mentioned ICMCP, there's IC Square, SANS, and ISACA that you can leverage as well. And frankly, nothing beats networking. So, hit the pavement, LinkedIn, reach out, don't be shy. And again, through Dave, you can send me a note, we'll put you on the list as well. But I think the internship, that's where the hustler comes out. The hustler in you has to come out. Why are you different? Why you deserve that internship? But they're out there. Just know that they're also in limited numbers. And again, I mentioned consulting companies as well. They do a really good job bringing in a lot of interns. So I would say right now, the world is your oyster. Go after it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nessie. Serenity, come off mute and come on camera, please.
Real quick, David.
Hello,
Just
everyone. Oh,
hey, Serenity. I just wanted to add to the internship question that Leah had, right? So like I did a good number of internships during undergrad, like 6 internships. There was one summer where I applied to like 35 different positions, and I didn't hear back from like more than half of them. And I probably got interviewed for like 10 of them. Got many no's. I think the key there is persistence, right? So like you only need one internship. So just make sure you're hammering out and connecting with people on LinkedIn, but also Twitter is massive.
Twitter,
Carey, this guy, Marcus Carey, he lists out every Friday a thread of open positions in his company, and people just pile in. So make sure you follow Marcus Carey, but those are just the 2 cents that I wanted to add there.
Okay,
You know,
thank you.
he just moved to Austin. He's representing Austin, Texas, big time. Great. Serenity, please.
Okay,
Thanks, Darwin.
great. Well, I have a question. How would you advise those of us interested in becoming CISO to get started developing the skills needed? And what would a strategic path to leadership and be if you wanted to become a CISO? And what career advice would you give to your younger self, thinking that you'd want to become a CISO one day?
Hey guys, can I go 3 for 3 on this one?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, but you guys can chime in, please. I don't want to feel like I'm monopolizing the Q&A, but thank you for that question. I would say that the path to CISO, there's no one path to the C-suite. I don't care if you're a COO, CISO, or whomever. The one path that I believe is the same is to always endeavor to excel, right? So if your path to life is to be better, do better and do more, be an asset to whichever organization you happen to be, bring that passion, always endeavor to excel. That being said, right, there are some CISOs that are really technical. There are some CISOs that are really into leadership, right? There are some CISOs that are into strategy. So there are so many different types. There are some CISOs that are into product security. So you could be whatever CISO you want to be, just focus on excelling on whichever of those aspects you want to deal with. So that's question number 1. I think your second question was around what advice would I give myself? So I would say the 19-year-old Yonesy, the advice that I would give myself would be, if I can go back and send myself either an Instagram message or a voicemail or a text, would be take more risks. I think we don't take enough risks being part. Listen, I'm an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. I grew up in the Bronx. Shouldn't be here having this conversation with you from where I came from. Small town. All I wanted to do was do the best that I possibly could. So make sure you take more risks. Because of that, we don't tend to 10 risks. Our various backgrounds, whatever your situation is, you always take less risks than you should. And one thing I've learned throughout my career, that when you are yourself, when you're authentic, and when you take risks, you will be rewarded, because that passion itself, it's still there. So give yourself more credit, take more risks. That would be the advice I would give myself.
Thanks, Yonesy. Love that.
David, you are on mute.
David, you're on mute, and I'm going to go on mute. So I'm done answering questions for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Yonesy, thanks very much. And please don't stay on mute if something pops up for you. Next question, Lawrence Bryant, come off of mute and come on camera and ask your question. And then after Lawrence, we have one more question. Lawrence, Lawrence, you there?
Hi, I'm here, but
okay.
unfortunately my camera's not working.
Ask your question, sir.
Sure. Just when you talk about people, process, and technologies, were you really speaking about how they interact and how that interact can affect an outcome? And if so, could you just give an example of a situation where you have to consider all 3 and how you have to balance your consideration of them depending on the situation that you're dealing with in your business organization?
Louis, get that one.
Okay, I can jump in on that one. One good example I think of that would be like we're undergoing a cloud migration right now, a couple of projects. This one is really an excellent example for trying to balance all three. So first of all, the technology, then being cloud. We have to really understand what that means to our organization, and why we want to do it in the first place, in terms of how is it supporting the business goals. But then we have to take and look inside and see, do we have the people that have the skill sets and the experience level to pull this off? And if not, then we have to talk about the processes of getting from our current state to our future state. And does that mean hiring a managed service provider that will provide the engineering and architectural experience to help us migrate from on-prem to the cloud? Does that mean a wholesale replacement? Does that mean that we incrementally migrate to the cloud? So all those issues come up at the same time. Do we have the right people with the right skills, the right experience, right, the right levels, as well as are we moving to the right technology, and what are the processes that are going to get us there? Fully in-house, some sort of hybrid where we work with the managed service provider? Do we work with the cloud service provider? Those kinds of things. So those are the decisions that you have to make, and the balance measure that you have to take sometimes when you're kind of having the big three up against each other. So that's a real world example. Does that help? Does that kind of answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it does very much. And yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel for how you balance those three factors in order to actually accomplish something in a real world environment. So I do appreciate your answer to that question.
Thank you.
Hey, am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. So listen, we're coming to the close of our time. We're about 2:16 or 3:16 on the East Coast, 2:16 here in Austin, Texas. I really appreciate having Sara and Louis and Yonesy, three great individuals. I got a great relationship with all three of them, and they're just super people, and I'm really happy that they've spent their time here. I know that Serenity tried to steal my last question. What would you tell a younger person? That's what Tomas Maldonado over the NFL always asks in his question. What would you tell your younger person? But you've got budding folks here who have great relationships, who are aspiring to have the same kind of relationships and aspiring to have the same kind of positions that you guys have at this current moment. Sara and Louis and Yonesy in that order, just parting messages to these folks. And I know you typed some things in the chat, but parting messages to these folks that have attended to hear you speak today. Sara, ladies first.
Yeah, and actually I was weighing whether or not I should also answer Serenity's question, because that is one thing for me. I've been a CISO twice. And the first time I was a CISO, I was a deputy CISO first, but none of that was a plan, right? There's no clear path, just like Yonesy said. And I think the advice I would give myself, because I don't know that I was striving to be a CISO, right? And so I don't think I was very purposeful. And so what I would do, the advice I would give myself is twofold. One, be purposeful about getting exposure in every area of security, not every area, but in a broader scope of areas of cybersecurity. And then two is also strike a better balance between focusing and prioritizing on my career and the things I want to do and the business need. Because a lot of times, and it's easy to say, okay, well, we need somebody over here. We need you to go do this. But that's totally out of alignment with what I want to do or where I want to go in my career. And too many times I just, I did what needed to be done. Sort of at my own expense, right? And so there's always a balance, because you need to support, you need to be the person who's supporting and solving problems. But I think just looking back, I probably would have made a few key decisions a little bit differently.
Gotcha. A friend of mine said recently, it's not about me, it's about the customer or the person I'm trying to provide a solution for. So don't become self-absorbed with yourself. Look at the path,
Absolutely.
Look at the end result, and work your way back. Louis, please give us your parting knowledge, if you will.
So one of the things I would have said to my younger self is to learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable positions, and not always kind of seek after the jobs and the roles that I enjoy. Because there were times in my early and mid career where I lost out on opportunities that came up because I didn't prepare myself, because I became a bit, you know, I homesteaded in a particular technology, because, you know, I got good at it. I became good at it because I did it all the time, but it was kind of like, that's all I did. So if I had to start all over again, I would continue to try and stretch and look for those opportunities to get involved with technologies and learn and develop skills that aren't necessarily the things that I love, like programming, to make it personal. I do not like to program, but I make myself do it because I understand that it dovetails on a lot of what we do in security. So that's a big piece of advice I would have given myself. I would have learned this a lot earlier.
Thank you, Louis. One of my signatures in my emails is that opportunity. Most people miss an opportunity because it shows up in overalls and looks like work, and so they don't want to get down. They don't want to do it because opportunity looks like work. But you've come, you know, look, in your career, you're well known as the SOC's a director of a CyberSOC, and everybody I know knows you. And so happy to have you here, and thanks you for the contribution. Yonesy, I call him Yos. Yonesy, thank you so much, man, for your time. You know, I know you're a busy CISO, just like Sara and Louis, and you've taken some time out today to really come and talk with the folks that came today. I really appreciate that. And you always hear this question, what would I tell a young Yonesy? You're from the Bronx, I'm from Brownsville, Brooklyn, so we know neither one of us should be where we are today, all right? I came out today that Brownsville, Brooklyn still looks like Beirut. There are parts of Brownsville, Brooklyn that look, it's hammered. So, you know what we should have, there were other trials along the way and challenges along the way and triumphs along the way. What would you do different, if anything? And what do you have to say to some of these folks that are aspiring to be just like you?
Well, since I already answered my first question through Serenity, I would add to that, right? So take more risks, obviously. The other one that I would say is don't be so hard on yourself. I think at the end of the day, we are our own worst critics. And it is, I just read the other day some article that we dwell more on failures than we do on success. And in one of the outcomes that the researchers found out, that the reason we dwell more on failures than success is that we expect to succeed. So if we expect to succeed when we fail, don't be so hard on yourself, right? Because I expect all of you to succeed.
No doubt.
So continue to be successful, take risks, don't be so hard on yourself. There's always, if there's any one thing that you should take away from this discussion today, always strive to do better and get better each and every day.
Thanks, Yonesy. Thanks very much. My coach told me, Dave, don't worry about failure. It should be, you should look at failure as the greatest teacher ever. That failure, you quote unquote, you call a failure, it's a lesson, right? You don't lose, you just learn. Yeah, Yonesy, Louis, Sara, and everyone else today, thank you so much for joining today. This is our closeout conversation. I appreciate it very much. Next month, August 28th, I believe, the day before my birthday, I'm interviewing, Virgo in the house, right? I'm interviewing Eric Pimenter, who is the chairman and CEO, or chairman and founder of Links Technology Partners, a company I founded with him back in 2008 or 9. He's an entrepreneur, we're serial entrepreneurs, and he's going to be talking about the trials and triumphs of an entrepreneur as a minority in cybersecurity. I'd like you all to come back. You'll see the announcement coming up in a couple of days on ICP and Engage. Thank you all for coming. Sara, love it. Thank you. Great seeing you again. Louis, my man, we're going to talk soon.
Yes,
Yonesy, thank you, Yonesy, man. We're going to talk too about the internships. All great, folks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, David.
Love it.
Thank you, David.
People. Thank you.
Sara, Yonesy, thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. And everybody that attended. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thomas,
You too.
Air Force man. Later.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
All right.
You
people.
too.